name is Sargent. I'm the executive director of Cape Fear Overwatch. When we found out about PFAS, and then that fall, when my brother, a former U.S. Marine and a firefighter, was diagnosed with terminal brain cancer. As you should know, military bases are highly contaminated with PFAS, and firefighters are a highly exposed community. My brother Grant died December 8th, 2019 at age 47, leaving behind his 1.5-year-old daughter, who will never know how cool he was. I printed some info on PFAS and brain tumors for you, along with some pictures of Grant and his obituary, and I'll leave that with you. Expert epidemiologists have told us it's nearly impossible to conduct an accurate epi study on PFAS due to several factors I'm happy to share with you with more time. That said, there are thousands of peer-reviewed research papers on the dangers of PFAS. The scientists from DuPont and 3M sounded the alarm on these chemicals to their bosses beginning in the 1950s. And here we are in 2024 with zero legislation and zero regulation in the state of North Carolina, a state with more PFAS contamination and more data on PFAS in our environment than any other in our nation. DuPont began discharging PFAS from Fayetteville Works in 1976. 48 years of exposure is long enough. 70 years of research is quite enough. It will take years even after filtration at the source is put in place for these chemicals to wash out of our drinking water supplies. North Carolina has more data on PFAS in our groundwater than any other state. I went ahead and printed some of it out. This is well sample provided by ChemWars. Well sampling information provided by ChemWars. This is the Lower Cape Fear sampling since 2022. This is the Fayetteville sampling since 2019. And this again is data by ChemWars, right? For those of the folks on the EMC who put more faith in the integrity of science from big business than they might have the EPA. And yet other states have PFAS groundwater standards and we do not. This is not only embarrassing to have so much data and be seemingly complacent enough to ignore it, it is sinful. In this data from ChemWars, which I hope, Dr. McDonald-Gibson, I know you know a lot about well data. I appreciate you being here. I wish some of your colleagues were here to hear us, but I hope that you will bring this back to them so that they can see it. And you'll see the bulk of it is only showing results on just 16 types of PFAS. Labs can measure about 60, and a significant thing to consider for Cape Fear region is that ChemWars' own science found 257 unknown PFAS coming from their site alone. Here's the research on that from ChemWars. We have zero data on the concentration of those 257 PFAS. ChemWars has to keep sampling until they reach a perimeter of non-detect, which they have not yet. The home with the highest concentration found so far near the site had 82,000 parts per trillion of the 16 PFAS measured. The home with the highest concentration level found in Lower Cape Fear so far had more than 16,000 parts per trillion. In one home, 80,000, and thousands of other homes just like that. And a reminder, the EPA's safe levels for the two PFAS with the most research available, PFOA and PFAS, are 0.004 and 0.02 respectively. I'm almost done and I apologize. There are 15,400 homes sampled so far with a combined 10 parts per trillion or higher of just 16 PFAS accounted for in this data. 15,400 homes. Many samples have been done on homes where in-home filtration has already been installed, and yet still they found super high levels. The highest at 6,600 parts per trillion in a home with a whole house filtration installed. It's hard and complicated to maintain these whole house filtrations, right? The site with the highest concentration is obviously a groundwater well at the ChemWars site, and it had more than 5 million parts per trillion in 2018. Due to source protection that was built since then, as required under the consent order, that level has significantly dropped, reducing the load to not only other groundwater wells in the region, but also the Cape Fear River, the drinking water supply for 500,000 people. Some members of the EMC who seem concerned with ChemWars' bottom line might want to consider that it's now abundantly clear that if DuPont had put in place filtration at their site before they began discharging in 1976, ChemWars would not be paying millions of dollars today to adhere to groundwater sampling and in-home filtration installation, plus 20 years of maintenance for each contaminated home, which is required under the consent order for these sources. Instead of dedicating themselves to this mission, some members have instead spent taxpayer time and money forcing the DEQ to provide details on how proposed rules might affect the bottom lines of the permitted community. The financial well-being of the permitted community is not the responsibility of the EMC nor the DEQ. Multi-billion-dollar corporations like Kenmore's have shareholders, stakeholders, and accountants for that work, so please let them do their jobs, and I'll ask the EMC to stick to theirs, which is again, to adopt rules for the protection, preservation, and enhancement of the state's air and water.
My name is Kemp, Burdette. I'm the Cape Fear Riverkeeper with Cape Fear River Watch, and I want to speak tonight in my professional capacity as an expert on surface and groundwater quality in the Cape Fear Basin. But I also want to speak tonight as someone who was born and raised here in Wilmington and who drank water contaminated with PFAS for my entire life. I want to speak as someone who's enrolled in a health study whose PFAS blood levels are in the highest risk category. I want to speak as someone who is the son of a man who lived here his whole life and drank the water his whole life and died of kidney cancer, the type of cancer that's most clearly linked to PFAS impacts. And finally, I want to speak as the father of two high school age girls who also drank PFAS contaminated water for the majority of their young lives. We know PFAS are dangerous. The body of evidence supporting this is huge and growing larger by the day. We know PFAS are created only by industry. We know that these compounds last forever. Wells contaminated with PFAS in North Carolina grows every day. And until the EMC passes groundwater standards, there isn't a thing that North Carolina families can do if their water is contaminated. Furthermore, these three groundwater standards should be rapidly followed by an aggressive class-based approach to regulating PFAS in groundwater and in surface water. The evidence is undeniable and the issue is simple and clear. No North Carolinian should be forced to drink PFAS in their water and wonder what health impacts they or their families will face down the road.